For a Western viewpoint on the nuclear talks in Switzerland, I'm joined by Mohsen Milani. He's executive director of the Center for Strategic and Diplomatic Studies. He's also a professor of politics at the University of South Florida. Why don't we start there? Give me your thoughts on what Dr. Morandi had to say about things.
Well, I think he expressed his personal point of view and an Iranian perspective, and I think it was quite articulate. There is not much I can add to his view.
Let me ask you this. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov now saying an agreement in principle is in place. It's interesting, though, we're not hearing that from the Western side. And as Richard Bestick pointed out, there's a managing of expectations. So give me your thoughts. We're hearing some things from some parties, perhaps a more, I guess, more cautious approach from other parties. What do we make of all of this?
I believe the two sides have made lots of progress. And I don't believe either side can go back to the pre-negotiation period. That means that I am very optimistic about the possibility of a written or oral statement tomorrow, later this evening or tomorrow. And the two sides are going to say, rightly so, that they have agreed on a large number of issues, but there are still some technical issues that they have to resolve. The two sides have reached the conclusion, and did so a while back, that there is no other alternative but negotiations, and that they have to come out with an agreement where both sides can claim victory. It must be an agreement that both sides can say win-win, and I think we are almost there.
What are the technical issues? What do you see as the sticking points now at the table, do you think?
I think from an Iranian point of view, as the previous speaker said, the question of how and when the sanctions are going to be lifted is very important. They want the sanctions to be lifted immediately and unconditionally. I'm afraid this is not going to happen because there are some sanctions that are imposed unilaterally by the US. The American president can, through executive order, rescind some of those. Some of the sanctions were imposed by the European Union. Some of the sanctions were imposed by the UN Security Council, and some sanctions were imposed by the US Congress. And I think it is unrealistic to expect that these sanctions are going to be removed. I think from the American point of view, the question of what kind of program, peaceful nuclear program Iran can have, what kind of inspections the Iranians are willing to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to do. Is that going to be on the spot, undeclared, unannounced inspection, and a number of other issues related to enrichment activities in Iranian soil.
I know you're optimistic and you expect something maybe in the next day or so, the next few hours, who knows when, but as Richard Bestick reported, 2 deadlines have come and gone. You've got several countries at the table, a lot of competing interests, strong outside forces at work. If Lavrov is right and the basic contours of a deal are in place, how do we get to this point, and what do you believe are the tipping points along the way?
I agree that there are 6 major global powers that are involved in these negotiations. But frankly, I think the 2 most important sides are the Iranians and the Americans. And of course, these 6 global powers have their own interests. But ultimately, it is not in the interest of the 6 global powers and in the interest of Iran to go back to the days of crippling sanctions or to the days of threatening invasion. Therefore, I think both sides will come to some sort of agreement, knowing very well that the agreement is not going to be perfect, knowing very well that we are going to have tough years ahead in terms of implementation of this agreement. There is always a possibility of cheating by Iran. There is always a possibility of Western governments and the United States not following the provision of the agreement. But again, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are not pleasant, and therefore the 2 sides have decided to choose the least bad of the options available. That's why I am optimistic, because the 2 sides have invested too heavily, especially the Obama administration and the administration of Mr. Rouhani. They have invested too heavily in these negotiations. not to allow it to succeed. I am very optimistic that they will have some sort of framework of understanding by tomorrow this time.
Mohsen Milani joining us from the U.S. state of Florida. Thanks so much.